Hey, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to another video. Now today, we're not gonna be working on this car, unfortunately, but we're actually here at Ant's Community Garage. It's a self-service garage, and what we're gonna be doing today is working on my 1997 BMW 328i. And it's been a while since I've worked on the 3 Series. I think this will be a good opportunity to at least kind of give you guys a recap of where we left off with this car. So I essentially bought this from a teenager that bought it from the original owner all the way back in 1997. So I have a full documentation of this car from beginning to end until the teenagers bought it. And apparently they told me that they got hit by a drunk driver. So we spent some time restoring it to pretty good driving condition. And then we kind of left it off there.
Oh my God, dude.
You want to pop open the hood? But I'm really happy to announce today that we're actually going to be doing a coilovers install, and this is all made possible by ECS Tuning. So we're going to be using ECS Tuning's in-house coilovers. And before we go into more details, let's go into the shop and we can at least show you guys around and you guys can get a better idea of what we're working with here today. All right, so this is the shop that we're going to be working in for the interim. They got a lot of really cool stuff here beyond just what we're working on today. They got the right-hand drive stuff, got the Z and the Golf, but most importantly, we're just packed up over here. We've already cracked open the box here from ECS Tuning, and this is their in-house coilovers. And this will be a really good opportunity for us to be able to run something much more aggressive. So I think the goal with this car is to not go all out with the E36, but I think it'll just be a cool opportunity for us to lower the car, and we're gonna be setting it up on a very aggressive wheel and tire setup that's gonna require rolling fenders. So this will be something that's more aesthetically pleasing for what it is. And I know that there's already a lot of E36 content there on the internet, but I don't see too much about the convertibles. So maybe this will give you guys a good perspective on what the E36 convertible is capable of, but I'm not gonna go full-blown race car with this one. We'll just have some fun with it and see what it comes out to be. And as you can see, it's on the original stock suspension, and we took this out autocrossing, and the thing is, it was leaking hydraulic fluid all over the place after the track event, which is very concerning. So that is kind of telling us this is probably the original spring and strut combo that was on this car all the way back in '97. So we're hoping to stiffen things up with that one. And I'll give you guys just a quick glimpse as to what they currently look like right now. So this is what the fronts are gonna look like. It's your pretty conventional linear coilover setup. What's nice with these two is it has the camber adjustment up top, as well as the dampening adjustment that happens on the top of the coilover as well. So this is gonna give you the option to make it as soft or as stiff as you want. So if you want it to be a pogo stick, you can do so. And for the rears, with E36 BMWs, it's actually a divorce setup. And what I mean by divorce setup is that the shock and the spring itself are completely separate. So this is gonna be your shock absorber that's gonna be taking the brutality of whatever you're gonna put this car through. And then separately is gonna be your springs that are gonna be attached to this. So this is the setup that we're gonna have with the perch. And then this is the locking collar where you're gonna be able to adjust the height here to make this as tall or as low as possible. I don't think we're gonna try and completely slam the car, but we're gonna have to eyeball it a little bit because we didn't have the predetermined preloads on this. But I think in the video, we can at least show you guys a little bit more in further detail. So I think with that being said, huge thanks to ECS Tuning for giving us the opportunity to do this. I'll make sure to leave everything linked down below. But I think with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so we got the car up in the air, and I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like underneath, because this is actually our first time seeing what the undercarriage of this car looks like. And the one prominent thing that you're gonna see right up here is, in typical BMW fashion, the power steering is leaking. And as you can see, look at this little collection right here that's already happening. So that tells you right then and there, this is a BMW. But for the most part, it's not rusty underneath. This is all very original stuff, and we'll kind of make our way through the back here. But I'm looking at the transmission casing. It looks like it hasn't bottomed out too much. As you guys know, I'm probably the only person that's taken this to an autocross. But we had a lot of fun with it. And in stock form, it's actually pretty refreshing to see that a lot of the stuff hasn't been tampered with or anything. I can even see over here in the back, the bushings look okay. A very prominent thing though is a lot of people mention this is with like the diff bushings. This is pretty procedural stuff to replace, as well as the subframe bushings. But for the most part, it actually looks really good. And I'm genuinely impressed at the condition of such an old car like this. There's a little bit of surface rust here or there that's slowly developing, but it doesn't look very cancerous in any way. But let's at least go look at the front shocks real quick, and we can show you what their current state is. And it's not looking very good for these. As you can see that there's hydraulic fluid developing. It's pretty wet inside of here. And I remember specifically after the autocross event, it was a lot worse. But since I've just been like casually driving this thing, and I honestly haven't put that many miles on it, it definitely needs to be changed out. So for us to do this, the procedure, especially for the fronts, there's gonna be these 2 bolts right here to hold down the bottom. And then we'll disconnect the end link here that goes to the sway bar. And then that will give us a much more prominent position to be able to take this out. So we'll focus on the bottom portion, removing the brake lines as well, and then being able to take all this stuff out, and then leaving the bolts at the top for last, and then kind of fish these on the way out. And then for the rears is a little different. So the rears is a divorce setup. So what they mean by divorce setup is that the shock and the spring are completely separate. I mean, look at this. Look at how crunchy this thing is, bro. It's already like halfway gone. I'm sure as soon as we take this off, and Ray, maybe if you even want to stand on top of this thing, it'll kind of give us a prominent idea of how cooked these are. But you can tell these have been sitting here for so long. So it's just a matter of getting to the rears here. I think we might even need to lower the car back down just to gain access to the trunk again to be able to undo these top bolts here. But it's literally just 1 bolt down here, and then you use a pry bar and you can kind of just pry out the spring itself. So it's a good starting point for us. I'm not too alarmed at anything that I saw underneath. I think that's one of the things you should be looking for, especially such an old car like this. But it looks like we lucked out for the most part. I guess now it's a matter of me shutting up and us actually doing something. So let's do it. Okay, so we got the shock out and it was fighting us because I'm willing to bet this is original. This poor thing is disintegrating and there's fluid on the inside. I mean, look at all the fluid. So you can't actually compress this one since it has the spring on it, but I bet you if you took it off, it'd just be a complete disaster. So we'll do the other side now. So there's actually a little mount or bracket that holds these lines together. So this is the speed sensor and this is for the brakes. So what we actually did is we use this. It's an adhesive on one side and then you zip tie on the other side. So if I just go right through here, and there you go. Holds your lines. I'm not gonna do it super tight, but it has its purpose. And things didn't actually go according to plan. So I'm actually back here at Ant's Community Garage to be continuing to work on the E36, but I'm not here with Ray and Harrison because of the hiccup that we had with this car. Now, this is just kind of the reality of working on old stuff. It happens, and unfortunately, this one just took a little bit longer than expected. So one of the bolts was seized to the point where I had to use a 4-foot pipe to get it off, and it just took a lot of time. You want to own a BMW? That's what you sign up for, man. It's ridiculous. And it was to the point where I just didn't want to keep Harrison and Ray waiting while we were trying to work on the car. We were chatting, we were having a good time, and I really just didn't want to take away from that. So I made the executive decision at the time to put it on pause and we'll come back to the car. So I only got the fronts installed on the E36 right now, but I'm back here to finish things up and we're actually gonna be doing the rear suspension on this car. So as you can see, I think just because the rears are pretty much blown, or at least I'm assuming at this point, it sits pretty low already in the rear. So it almost looks like it is on a full set of coilovers, but I have the fronts in here and I got them pretty dialed in for the most part. I would say that you can definitely go a lot lower. And of course, while I'm driving here, Bird decided to defecate all over the fender, so just ignore that. But there's about a 2-finger gap here right now. I don't want to go too crazy. It definitely needs an alignment for sure. But since we're going to be doing the wheel and tire setup, which I'll have to save for you guys for another video. It's gonna be a much more aggressive setup where we'll need to roll fenders in the rear at the very least, run some negative camber, but for the most part, it's sitting pretty well. I would say just for driving this for the past couple of days that it actually cruises very nicely. I'm like genuinely impressed at how smooth it rides. Usually coilovers, it's kind of a roll the dice. You can get something that, you know, can ride really stiff and be really good on the track, or it's more catered towards daily driving, but just like in daily driving scenarios, it's been really good. I'm very curious to see what it looks like for the next one. But, you know, this is just kind of the reality of things. You can hit some hiccups and things just take a little bit longer than expected. Gotta get back to working on the E36. I'm very excited about this one, and I hope you guys are too. Oh God, I need to do the upgrade where I can actually put studs in this, because it's so bizarre with these lug bolts. Doesn't make any sense. So every time you take off the wheel, it's just like it wants to fly off at you, but oh my God, look at the tread wear on these tires. Oh, this thing is in dire need of an alignment. It's really, really terrible. I will admit this thing is very fun in the rain to mess about, but I wouldn't advise this for any inexperienced driver, and this is a big reason why you change your tires and get in alignment. My goodness. These are the same wheels and tires that I got when I purchased the car from these teenagers. They told me they got hit by a drunk driver, but these are getting nice and smooth right here. I don't know what's causing that type of wear. It's very interesting to say the least. So maybe it's just worn out components in general, but you can tell that it's only making contact really on the inside of the wheel. So just an interesting data point to at least look at this in further detail. Okay, I got this thing up in the air. I just wanted to show you guys what's going on in the rear. I think what we need to primarily focus on is just getting the shock from the top. And the way to do it on the convertible is kind of interesting. I think we'll need to actually open the top halfway, which is unfortunate. So that means I'll have to pop this all the way back down. But all you really got to do is you get those two bolts that are up top, and then you're going to focus on this one down here. Luckily, this car isn't rusty. I mean, that is such a blessing in itself. Looking underneath, everything looks really good. A prime weak point on these cars too is the subframe bushings. I was taking a look just to see what they look like, because I do definitely want to upgrade the open diff. There's nothing wrong with it, but I do think that it would be nice to get like a 323 LSD in here. I think there's also another one that you can get is like the 315 LSD from an M3. It's a little bit longer of a final drive, but I think for this one, the 323 is gonna be kind of the sweet spot. 391 might be a little bit too short, but that's also another option as well if you wanted to weld it. But I'm looking at the bushings themselves. They look to be pretty good. I don't see anything that's too concerning here, because if these were completely disintegrating, I wouldn't feel comfortable taking this to the track. So this is actually a huge plus, because if you're gonna do the diff anyways, you might as well do everything all at once. So it looks pretty good. I'll probably use some penetrating oil here. I can see this is, the bump stop is completely disintegrated. Good Lord. But this 25-year-old car stuff, that's honestly not that out of the ordinary. Axles look good. It would be interesting just to see taking this out, but I guess we'll have to save that for another video. I don't think it's gonna give me too much trouble. You're gonna use an 18mm here. Okay, so I should be able now to use a pry bar to be able to get this out, the spring itself, because now there's no load being put on this. Probably could disconnect the sway bar to get less load on it, but I really don't want to do it, because I know you can do it without it. Oh. I just got a mouthful of dirt. Whew. There you go. All right, now we gotta deal with getting the top shock mounts off. Very interesting, I've never done convertible rear shocks, so this will be a little bit of an adventure. I think it's gonna be very easy though. I don't know why, I'm always very nervous opening the automatic top on this thing. I'm just waiting for the day it's not gonna work. And of course, it'll probably be a rainy day and it's just gonna be dumping on me. Okay, but I think for this, we're just gonna go halfway. So I just wanna make sure that this opens enough for me to gain access to the rear. Now that we have the top in this position, it makes it very easy for us to gain access. And it's gonna be having this little plastic cover right here. So you're just gonna pop that off and it should give you full access to the bolts that you need to take off. I believe it's a 13 millimeter. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I guess we'll find out in a sec. Okay, so just to install this, one thing that I want to point out to you guys is with the rear coilover, what I actually did is I got this little plate here as a form of reinforcement once I put this in here. So I'll just show it to you guys real quick what that looks like. In terms of the difference, there's gonna be a gasket that goes on the bottom, but on top here, there's this little plate like so. So we'll keep that on the top, and I'm just gonna sneak this from the bottom, and I should be able to do it. Usually like you need a friend to help you with this one, but I think in this case I should be okay on my own. There we go. All right, so we'll leave that dangling because we'll need to put some preload down here on the shock itself. But I need to get the new spring and make sure it's seated correctly, or else it's gonna be a nightmare. Alistair was giving me a little lesson here on spring preload on a divorced suspension setup. We have this backed all the way down, and what did we say? It was about like an inch going up from here?
3/4.
Yeah, so that seems like a lot of load to put on this. But if we put this down anymore, like you were saying, it's gonna be really rough ride, cruising around and stuff. So I guess ideally we just keep this maxed out. Yeah, so we got this all here. I'm gonna have to just replicate this on the other side, but at least now we know what to do. Okay, so we got everything hooked up. Car's back on the ground. I think the height's pretty good. Could use a little bit more dialing in. I feel like the left side, for whatever reason, is a little bit lower than the right side. I don't know if maybe it just needs to settle. I haven't completely taken it off the lift just yet. It's doing a little bit of a wheelie. So I think it's a little bit more dialing in once we do the new wheel and tire setup. But I'm very happy with it so far, but I still haven't taken it yet on the road. So that's gonna be the real determining factor. This actually looks really great. Do you think it's an adequate drop? It's maybe about, what, 1.5 inches or so. Really just transformed the car. It looks a lot less, you know, like grandma's car and a little more aggressive. The real test though is really for us to take this thing out first spin. For anybody that's looking to do this sort of upgrade, the first thing that I'm gonna recommend is trying out this on the softest setting and then working your way up. I currently have it at 2 clicks past the softest setting that you can have on the dampening adjustment. And the dampening adjustment is actually just right underneath the hood, and I can show you that real quick. It's gonna be right here. It also has these camber plate adjustments, and as you can see, I'm running a very aggressive negative camber right now. But it definitely doesn't look like that straight out the box. We're gonna need to run a pretty aggressive setup since we're gonna be running a very aggressive wheel and tire setup. To change the dampening adjustment, you're just either gonna turn it counterclockwise to soften it up, or you'll move it clockwise to be able to harden up the suspension. So I currently have it at 2 clicks in the front. And then to do it in the rear is interesting because you actually have to put the top down halfway. And this point will be for pulling up the deck lid, and then underneath the deck lid, where the top typically goes, is where you gain access to the top of the strut tower bolts on the rear end of the car. I just put the top down because I thought it would be nice on a beautiful day like this. I'm just hoping that there's not too much wind noise for you guys. But as you'll notice, the car is running a little bit cooler than usual. I have it right below the middle when it comes to the temperature that we have. And I think it has something to do with the thermostat. I think eventually I would like to change it out for one that stays dead center, because this is the first E36 that I've had that actually runs a little bit cooler than usual. It's not the end of the world, but just something to consider. And also the airbag light is on because of the driver's side seatbelt switch is starting to go bad, which is very unfortunate. But I mean, who cares, man? It's a beautiful day, sun's out. It's a good day to be alive, really. The car feels really good under pressure, under load. When it comes to the stiffness, it's definitely stiffer than stock. It's definitely stiffer than those blown shocks that were on this, especially in the rear. Those were absolutely gone on this car. And it's amazing how something like this can make a tremendous difference with the driving experience. But with stock wheels and tires, there's no rubbing issues, which is a plus. But since we're gonna be running a much more aggressive setup, this will be only a temporary thing as of now. I've dialed the car in, it's pretty low. It's not as low as you can go, but it's to a point where it feels pretty good for what it is. So as we set off here and keep going, I do think that there is a lot to consider when you're getting a set of coilovers. I think that if you wanted to run something like a spring and strut combo for a little more comfort, that may actually be the way to go. But I will say this for daily driving is not bad at all. Driving this on the street, this is a pretty smooth road here right now, so this may not be the best representation. But I do think once the road gets rough, you will feel it. I'm not gonna try and tell you that you're not. I mean, you're putting a much stiffer suspension on a car. So with coilovers, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. If you wanted something a little bit smoother, you could do something like air ride, spring and strut combo again. I think the Coney yellows, especially on the E36, would be a really good option there as well. But in terms of the handling dynamics and the way that it takes corners, it's very different. The slight bit of negative camber that we're running right now means that the contact patch, when you got it fully turned, is so much better, giving you the ability to really hone in on the handling dynamics. I think that it rides really good for what it is. I'm very happy with the way this one turned out. Okay, so I just pulled over to the side. I wanted to take you guys on a rougher patch of road because I do think that what I was driving on before was like a really smooth example. And I know that this road isn't 100% perfect. I'm not gonna be diving for potholes or anything like that, but I'm gonna get it up to speed so you can see how it drives. And really, like I said, it feels really good for what it is. There's like a bump right here. Yeah, it takes it. Not too bad. Really happy with the install. Really appreciative of the opportunity. I want to thank Ants Community Garage as well as ECS Tuning for working with me on this one. But I think with that being said, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. What should we do for the E36 next? And I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.